No, that's not it.
That's not it.
Our guest this evening for the next 2 hours, Joyce Keller, and we're going to talk with her about a myriad of different topics, as I mentioned. We were kind of, just before the last break, hopefully our buzz is off the line, and we've got Joyce Keller back with us now. Joyce, talking about making connections with the dead and how we can kind of bridge that communication ourselves. What do you recommend to people that want that sense and feel of connectedness with their deceased loved ones? You know, I know you were talking about getting past the grief and beating that. And again, I'm sorry, the buzz was pretty brutal. Let's get another quick little recap of what's the best way to get past that grief, in your opinion.
Wow, I don't want to plug my book, but that's a good way. 7 Steps to Heaven, and it tells the 7 primary steps for communication. And one thing is trying not to be so mired in grief that, like going to the cemetery all the time, like keeping your energy really, really low. That makes it hard for those who have crossed over to communicate with us. I'm not saying be joyful, but let the grief be honored and then kind of go past that. I remember when my mom passed, my dad went to the cemetery every single day. And I said, Dad, this is not a good thing to do. And he said, well, why isn't Mom communicating with me? Why don't I hear from her? I said, well, for one thing, stay out of the cemetery. The lowest energy is there, and people who are earthbound are there, and it's not good. It's a very sad place, and the energy is too low. So I would say, number one, you get your energy up. I'm not saying be happy about the extreme loss that we all experience, but somehow or other, don't be so mired in that deep place of grief, that deep well of sadness, because that's counterproductive to communication.
Well, now, you mentioned not to be lighthearted and such, but actually, wouldn't that bring your vibrational level to a better place where maybe you would make a connection?
Sure.
I've said often when I go that at my funeral, and, I've told Tim, I've told my loved ones, if I go before them, I understand there'll be some tears. There better be some tears.
Oh, yeah, we'll be all crying for you.
I want there to be laughter, man. I want people to tell the stupidest stories they can remember me, the stuff that made them laugh. I want it to be a joyful occasion, because
exactly
that's what I want, and how I want to be remembered. And, talking, and I wonder if that's why my connection to my grandfather was so profound, because he laughed at the funeral. We laughed. I mean, we cried hard, but we laughed after, and we talked about the funny things my grandfather did, and there was such joy and light and love mixed with the longing sense of grief and losing. But it kept me, I think, on a different level, which made communication a little bit more effective.
Precisely. And that's exactly what my mother said. She said, please don't grieve for me, because that's the worst thing you can do. So I said, well, Ma, it's going to be really hard to be joyful. But the first thing that happened in the cemetery, right after she was buried, I guess, we were all throwing roses on the grave and all, it was extremely, as you can imagine, extremely sad, because she was such a wonderful person. But she said, I want you to laugh and have fun. I said, Ma, I don't know how this is going to be possible. I don't know how. But the first thing that happened was my brother dropped his rose. So he said, I'll be right back. I'll go get it. So it blew about 4 grave sites down, and he went jumping over graves to get it. When he bent down to get it, his pants ripped completely from the front to the back, and his underwear was out. So my sister and I and all of us just started laughing. It was the funniest thing ever. And that was really what set off a day of laughing and telling jokes about coffins rolling down hills, and just, it was what my mother requested. She said, please don't be sad. She said, let this be a day of joy, of remembering the good times that we had together. And I think that's the best thing we can do. So that's why you had communication with your grandfather. People are saying, well, I'm not grieving heavily, but I still have no communication, so they're feeling frustrated. But Dave, can you just tell us what brought that on? Like, what were you doing the night before that happened, or before you went to sleep? Did you do anything that was joyful or uplifting?
Actually, my life had turned rather dark at the time, because I was missing my grandfather so deeply, and it had been about a month. And he came to me in this lucid dream form, drew me out of a dream into this, what I believe to be kind of an in-between world.
Wow.
And he said, kid, we need to talk. You're not dealing with this well. And I said, I'm not. I said, I wasn't prepared to let you go. I don't deal well with death. I'm lucky at the age of 46 to say I can count on one hand and not even use all my fingers the people close to me that have passed away.
Yeah.
So I've really been lucky in my life. On the other hand, it's left me emotionally vulnerable, because I don't deal with death well. I haven't jaded or built up a skin to losing. So it makes it very hard for me. And he walked me through a lot of the scenarios, a lot of the questions, which will lead me into a point here. You work with angels, correct?
Sure, I think we all do. We don't even know it, but they're there. They're sometimes wearing regular, ordinary clothing. You just don't know if they're angels, but they are.
My question was, did I have an actual encounter with my grandfather? Or did I have an encounter with an angelic taking the form of my grandfather? Because when I went to embrace him at the end of our talk, there wasn't a sense of flesh and bone and fabric, although he looked it to me. There was a sensation of this warm, vibrating blast of air. I don't know how to explain it, almost electrical, but more like just this warm, energetic blast of air. And when I pulled away, he said, "I'm sorry, you're not used to that." And he said, "Okay, now." And I embraced him, and I could feel the bone and in his elbow when he hugged me, because he had the boniest elbows on the planet. I could feel the shirt. I could feel him there, and it was very real to me. But I left after that thinking, it was a very good moment. It was beautiful. It was nicely. It was a nice thing to have happen. However, I've wondered, was that an actual encounter with my dead grandfather, or do angels take these guys as to make the message easier for us to accept?
What an impossible question with an impossible answer. It's both. And I really think that's the oldest question ever, and I think it's such a good question. And Dave, all I can say is I think that angels interact with our departed loved ones, and they do it as a team effort. So if they're new to communication, as your grandfather clearly was, an angel will overlay their energy with him. They'll work together as a team. It's like kind of a puppet thing, if you think of it that way.
Right.
And they'll do it together. So, yes, it was your grandfather. And was it angelic? Yes. So it was together. And he learned a lot, you learned a lot, and it was fantastic. And what did you ask? You said, how do you know if it's real or not? Was that the question?
Well, my point was, how do I know, how do we discern between it being a real encounter with a loved one as opposed to it being an angelic intervention, which I believe I've had both kind of encounters in my life. But hearing people that have had physical contact with what they believe to be an angel, a heavenly angel, many of them have described it as not a sense of skin and bone, but a sense of energy and either kind of pulsating or blasting air, electrified energy, which is very, very spot on to what the experience was when I tried to grasp my grandfather and give him a hug. So I've been left wondering and thinking, I guess if a message had to be given to me, if it showed up in the guise of, Tim hovering over my bed with wings on and a white sheet telling me everything will be fine, I would think, boy, I've got to stop eating, Mexican food before dinner.
I was just saying, no more nachos.
Right, but if it's my grandfather and he says everything's going to be fine, kid, I can accept that message more because it's coming from somebody I know, I love, I recognize, and I trust. So I don't know if it, to me, are these real moments. I would like to think, Joyce, that when we die, we get to go. We're not trapped here by the need and want and desire of our loved ones, that we can go wherever we need to, and that the angels would take up that slack, and they would be the ones to make those final messages, to give us our completion, and take on the disguise. And again, why they may look younger and they may look healthier because they can only do so much by taking on the guise, but still that energy of them shows through. And I think that may be why so many spirit encounters where they look so much younger and healthier is just that. It's not really them. It's the guise of what they were worn by an angel to give us an answer.
So you answered your own question. That was a good answer.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm good. I didn't even know that.
That was great. No, I think that it's both. I think that they usually appear to be about 25 or 28 when most of us look at our best. And there's this overlay of energy. And is that what you were saying, that they are working together with us? And you could say, well, my grandfather never looked so good. Well, if you knew him when he was 28, that's probably how he looked. So I think it's both. It's neither one, and it's both. Do you agree with that?
I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm not a sensitive. I don't know, and I don't have regular conversations with angels. Most of the people in my lives are more devilish than they are angelic. So, it's hard for me to understand. And so many of us, I think that's the frustration is we want to have. That's the whole journey. That's part of what's kept me going, my fear of death, and I just want some kind of definitive sense that I don't have to worry, that that we do keep in touch, that we do always have our loved ones with us. And it's not just the words of lovely Joyce Keller promising me that we do. It's the fact that it's great that you say so and that you can do it with conviction and sincerity. But, we're a show-me nation. We're a show-me world. We want what we want. We want to be able to feel that security, and it's so hard to just buy into it because the kindness of another tells us it's there and exists.
Precisely. That's why near-death experiences are so great. And thousands of people have had them.
That's a positive spin on that, right?
Really. And the ones who have had that near-death experience, all you have to do is go to the web and thousands of them come up. And some of them are not so great. I mean, there are a small handful of people who have gone to the dark side, but then they've come back. And the thread is all the same. It's a pretty great experience, and for the most part, they don't want to come back here because this is one tough school. Now, did I hear before you have 6 degrees of temperature where you are, Twin Cities? Is that right?
No. I don't think it's really 6 degrees. What are we at now, Tim? Negative.
That isn't 6 degrees, Joyce. That's 6 below.
Yeah. 6 below with a wind chill of somewhere around 35 below.
Right.
Tell me this is not hell. It's like terrible.
No, because hell has already frozen over. This is a couple miles past hell. Right? Yeah. We call this Minneapolis.
Oh, it's terrible. Well, we're in New York, and it's very cold here also. And I just think the lessons on the earth are just so rough for everyone. And you can't be on the earth unless you're here to learn. And if you think it's going to be an easy slide, I think, and pardon me for saying that when everything's so icy, but that's really true. I think you're here, and we're all here as students. And when you die, it's like summertime. That's why some metaphysicians have called it Summerland, because you have those in-between experiences where you go to other dimensions, or you just kind of sleep or relax or regroup or get your strength back. So there's no way anyone can be convinced of anything other than having that experience yourself, either after we cross over or with a near-death experience. So you have a choice of one of those two. And you can't get by on belief or anyone saying, well, this is what happens. And the determining factor of real death is when the silver cord, or the old Hindus called it the Sujatma, I believe, when that snaps and breaks and there's no coming back. And for the people who are in comatose states or sleeping states of one sort or another, they're probably still intact and they can come back. Or as what happens with many people, you can have another whole walk-in experience, which I don't think is too common, but it does happen, where one soul really does leave and another one will come in. And you have that switching over of, they have to take on the whole karmic or destiny of the prior person who has left, and they have to agree to finish that up. And I think that the angelic realm is so fantastic because it's so quick and so advanced. They're like faster than the speed of lightning, and they know exactly what our choices are. And if you're on the earth, you have free will. So you'll be able to choose what you think is right for you at the time. And it's their responsibility to interact with our karma, like your decisions with your karmic pattern. So did I just sandwich too much all into one long answer?
It's great. It's a good sense for it. Let's take a break. You can find out more information about our guest at her website, JoyceKeller.com. That's Keller, JoyceKeller.com. When we come back, let's talk about soulmates.
Ooh.
What is a soulmate? Do they actually exist? Is mine Tim? Stay tuned. We'll find out more on Darkness Radio.
Proudly operating 24 hours a day, because who knows when you'll tune in. Don't get psychic with me, fella.
Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130.